The Asylum.
Good evening, welcome to the Asylum on Stafford FM. It's me, Gunnar, in a chair of destiny. Joined this week by the group from the Multidimensional Show, host Rachel Murphy. Good evening, Rachel.
Good evening, Ian.
And we're also joined by Gwen Harrison on the line as well. Good evening, Gwen.
Hey.
Rachel, so tell us a little bit about the Multidimensional Show. What is it that you guys are trying to achieve? I mean, it's November the 11th, isn't it, in Birmingham? Firstly, just what are your websites, guys?
The Multidimensional Show can be found on www.multidimensionalshow.co.uk.
Wicked. And Gwen, what's your website?
My website is godivasonicalchemy.com.
Wicked. And you do Sonic Alchemy. I'm going to ask you some more about that in a few minutes, Gwen. Right after we speak to Rachel. Rachel, tell us a little bit about the Multidimensional Show. What is it? Why you set it up? What you're trying to achieve?
Okay, well, it started with two people interested in two different things, but related things. The person I started with this with, he was interested in alien and ET contact. He'd had some experiences. He was an experiencer. He'd had some etheric, multidimensional kind of experiences as well. And I was coming from the psychology, sort of spiritual psychology background, and my interest was in consciousness and the nature of reality. So yeah, we kind of got together and we had our backgrounds in organising events of this nature. So the idea was to combine these interests and create what I came up with the name of the Multidimensional Show.
It's a really apt name as well, actually.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I'm guessing that you guys came together because these kind of fields overlap, that there are dots that needed connecting. You connected those dots in a way to try and understand the greater and wider whole.
Yes. Yeah. And underlying that, as Gwen will probably touch on as well, is that feeling that when we truly know our nature and truly know, get a sense of that connection to that greater reality, we actually empower ourselves. We actually connect with our true power. And I feel a very strong calling to kind of help humanity in my way with that.
Do you think that then, guys? Do you think that when we hit a state within our lives, I guess, where we're in the right place, that these things start to happen a little bit quicker, that they start to manifest themselves easier in some ways? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, I think might have to go through a few kind of stumbling blocks.
What called life, Rachel? Yeah,
life. Yeah. Life kind of happens.
I've been stumbling over that one for 40 years, near enough. Yeah. So this show's about bringing a greater awareness to our wider reality, combining science, humanity, spirituality with talks in the field of quantum physics, metaphysics, history, psychology, and consciousness. You've got a number of speakers on, haven't you? One of which, of course, is Gwen. We've also got on the phone later on Cara St. Louis as well, and Barbara Chabior.
Yes, that's right.
Cool. So, Rachel, tell us a little bit about, you're giving a talk as well, aren't you? I'm guessing you're going to open the evening up or the day up, and you're giving a talk first. What's that about?
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking about our multidimensional reality. And I'm going to really kind of start the evening, the day even, with just kind of overview of where we're coming from with our talks, because they're all going to be focused around the multidimensional theme in one way or another. I'll touch on it. So, I'll start with the analogy of a radio station, really. It's one that's commonly used, and I'll just talk about how we are kind of tuned into only a very small bandwidth, small frequency.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot more to our reality, and when we're able to tune into these different frequencies, we quickly realise there's a lot more going on. And as we open our minds up, as you were saying before, we start to get more connected to where we need to be and get these guidances and insights. It's my experience, my personal experience, that we start to get these kind of signs and get led to where we need to be. So yeah, I'll talk about the radio analogy, and then there's a few things sort of going off from that. The ET experiences that people have are very much sort of follow the idea that they're interdimensional kind of beings. A lot of the UFO experiences seem to be that way, and there's a few people that have kind of found that themselves or written about that. And I'll talk about consciousness and how we have so much more going into our consciousness than we're actually aware of. I think we're only aware of maybe 1% of the information actually goes into our brains, and that's just with current neuropsychology kind of tapping into this, the data that we are able to access. There's probably a unlimited amount of information actually that is available to us, and we're, as we evolve, we start to become more and more aware of these different levels of reality, if you like.
It's interesting, Rachel. It reminds me of Aldous Huxley's book Island, and there's a beautiful quote in it that I always used to love, and it says, floating between the real and imagined, between what comes to us from outside and what comes to us from deep inside ourselves, I think it is, or something like this. Do you think then that the Multidimensional Show is almost bridging that gap in some ways? I mean, we are lied to us by our senses, aren't we? You know, we, like you say, we see a tiny little fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum almost, and we really believe that is the full extent of the universe, but the reality is it isn't. And I guess for me, I think a lot of the times that things like paranormal events and sometimes things like UFO events, all these sort of things, are probably somewhere much deeper. You know, there's probably a mechanics behind it, but we unfortunately don't know what that mechanics is. Is the Multidimensional Show then about trying to find the pathways to bridge those gaps, let's say, to understand the mechanics of things like the paranormal or consciousness or spirituality or whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, as you introduced the Multidimensional Show, you mentioned, science and the arts and psychology and history. It's about combining these different things. There's, our knowledge is compartmentalized. We've got phenomenological kind of experiences that are happening, and they're not necessarily taken into account with the science field. I think new physics is kind of going some way to bridge that gap, and there are progressive scientists that are kind of taking on board the experiences that people have, and you've got like Stanford University.
I think so. I think that ultimately all we are is just mechanisms, I guess, for processing data from the universe. And unfortunately, we don't seem to be able to process the data very well, do we? In many respects.
Well, some say that the brain is actually a filter. It's kind of like a transducer. It kind of
take the unicorns out. He's going to freak out.
Yeah, that's it. That's the one.
Don't show him the full majesty of the universe. He can't handle it.
No, and it doesn't really serve kind of like the corporate kind of consumerist kind of society we live in, does it? Really?
Do you think, and this is another question I had about this, Rachel, as well, do you think then, you see it a lot on the internet, you see a lot of people talking about this idea that we're awake now, I'm like woke AF and stuff, I'm like some new spiritual being. Do you believe that there is a change in paradigm? Do you believe that we're heading towards a place where more people are waking up, if you want to call it that, or more people are becoming in tune? Or do you think that, as we'll talk to Gwen in a few minutes, maybe spirituality is changing, and maybe this is a new form of that that's based around science and based around consciousness being fundamental?
Yeah, I think science is probably the strongest kind of portal into this understanding. I think we've come to a point where a lot of understanding comes from the left brain kind of empirical kind of understanding. So that's kind of like a bridge for many people. That's the entry point. Probably wasn't actually my entry point. Mine was much more feeling sense and much more kind of kinesthetic, and I sense realities, and I've experienced interesting things, particularly around ET contact or ET kind of sightings. So yeah, I've kind of got into the science field through my own kind of sense of the wider reality. And I think, there is a growing trend to kind of look within, definitely. The age of the guru is quickly kind of passing, and it's much more about kind of our own internal connection to this wider reality and to each other. And I think when we have that connection to each other, I think that's when we'll see the world that we really want to see now. And we'll start to treat the world and each other a lot better. Sounds a bit cheesy, but...
No, but it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know we interviewed a guy called Miguel Madonca a few months back, and he looks a lot at people who claim to be hybrids, who believe they're hybrids. And ultimately, most people, and I was looking at this week as well, looking at the Jesse Rostenberg case, which is 64 years, I think, since that happened in 1954. When a lot of experiences start off with a fear, they start off with a terror and stuff like this, but through, I guess, then there comes this process of research and learning and of growth, doesn't there? And then ultimately, many of these people who claim to have seen things in the sky or have a spiritual nature have a much more in tune nature with reality, let's say, much more in tune or empathic, care a lot more, are much more artistic as well, aren't they? Do you think that's one of the things that happens, Rachel, to people who have these kind of experiences? That there's a kind of a process and learning that you go through, and then you kind of come out the other side much more balanced and talking about poetry and stuff?
Well, I think ultimately, I think that's how it seems to evolve. Everybody's on their own path, so it's generalization, isn't it, to say that that's definitely what happens. But I think there's many different entry points. I think these experiences with multidimensional beings or angels of light or ET contact, I think they're just one of many ways. I think hardship is another way. Great loss or adversity can often be the catalyst. It's kind of the word, really, isn't it, for looking out beyond ourselves and seeing that we're more than the sum of our parts, and that there's a lot more going on. But everyone's on their own path, to say. So some people may take a lot longer to kind of embrace.
Do you know what? I find it fascinating now we're talking about it. We interviewed a guy called Evan Strong a few months back, talking about the idea that humans didn't originate from Africa. They may have originated from Australia. And this kind of out of Australia theory and stuff like this. Now, the Aborigines say that we were basically seeded by people from the Pleiades and that they came down here. But one of the reasons they were so interested in the human race was because we could do stuff that they couldn't. And it surrounds the idea of expressing and feeling love. And I think this is fascinating because as we're talking about it now, if an alien race were to come down here, surely it'd just make loads of sense for them to be really analytical and anal about it and go, right, just fill that guy's head full of maths and let him explain to the rest of the universe how it all works. But they're not doing that. They're making us write songs. They're making us get poetic, making us deliver art. I think that's that. Is this the reason why, maybe, Rachel, is because these are our natural skills. These are something that we possess, that we're very fortunate enough to possess. Maybe that's the best way to get the message out.
Yeah, well, that's going back to the Multidimensional Show. I suppose the bits of with that rationale and also that intuition, the arts and music and the sort of more left brain kind of rationale kind of thinking is combined. There's definitely something about art form which says so much more than words can ever do. The feeling that it brings, the inspiration it brings, the connections it brings are definitely more than the sum of the notes that are played or the colours or the lines that are drawn.
Oh, that's so true, isn't it, as well? That's so true, that music and the arts do become much more than the sum of their parts in many respects. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's the best medium with which to transmit information. Rachel, speaking about that, we've also got Gwen Harrison on the line, haven't we? Good evening, Gwen.
Hi there.
Hello. You've been listening in, I guess, to the conversation as we've been going along. Dude, you can chip in at any point because I know that you've got loads to say on this subject as well. Gwen, you do the Godiva Sonic Alchemy. Explain to us, what is that?
Godiva Sonic Alchemy.
It's like, how do I bottle lightning?
Yeah.
Oh.
That is such a good question. It's really always evolving. And it's defined in so many different ways, and really it's become about me really committing and like being determined to commit to my own connection with myself and with this planet, with the stars, and also coming to realize ultimately my pure source connection, where all of this is coming from. And in that commitment, things manifest, and they manifest through sound and song and movement and dance. But like Rachel was saying, it's I really came to realize how it was the frequency that was so important and what was really having the impact. And so, yeah, I've just been on this really interesting journey of my own self-discovery and healing, really. And in that, uncovered gifts that I have to share. And so Godiva Sonic Alchemy is it is kind of the energetic art of alchemy, I guess.
Wow. Right, dude, there's so many millions of questions. I'm just going to chuck this in. Actually, I'm going to go free form, right? Guys, just talk to me about synchronicities and tell me your thoughts about this sort of stuff. We were mentioning it just off air a few minutes ago. Let's take a different direction. Talk to me about synchronicities and talk to me about the nature of the universe.
Yeah, synchronicities. I think the whole of life is a synchronicity. The fact that we're here is a synchronicity. So to actually tune into the frequency of synchronicities and to notice them is actually being in tune with life, in tune with yourself and your greater self, talking to your kind of, your embodied self in this time and space, in this linear time and space kind of level of reality. We're kind of working synchrony with the universe, and the more we follow it, the greater we become, the more expanded we become. And Gwen was talking about how we kind of come across things that we think are going to go a certain way and manifest a certain way, actually, so that they're there for us to kind of develop us to create or to become the person that we need to be to receive these things. So
wow, synchronicity, that is such a big question. Again, like all of these questions, there's just so many ways you can answer them, and really it's just it can be quite overwhelming.
Gwen, actually, you should be the guy trying to put the questions together, trust me. Where do you go? Where do you go? I mean, there's a million. That's why I was like, just let it go. Just let it go and let it do what it's going to do. It's easier.
Yeah, right. And just trusting the flow and the process, and just trusting that whatever comes through is what we need to share and what people need to hear. So, I mean, as far as synchronicities go, yeah, like Rachel was saying, I think life is synchronistic. Like life is naturally meant to be in harmony and flow, which appears as synchronicities. And so quite often I have friends of mine saying, oh my God, I can't believe this just happened, and like describe what you would call a synchronicity, or two events matching and feeling like there's an air of magic around it. And I always say to them, I was like, you say that like it's abnormal. Like I actually, like I'm starting, and this is partly to do with the just like freaking radical surrender that my life has called me to do at certain stages.
I love that radical surrender. I'm feeling that one, Gwen, definitely.
Yeah, right. It's just like,
no, totally.
This just has to happen, and so and things just lining up to really feel like that's possible, and also having to feel some of the fear and the terror that can come with that, and just trusting and realizing like, oh wait, no, it's meant to be gradually in different stages. Like Rachel was saying, everyone's at different stages on their path, but that is the nature of the universe. The universe is working in harmony, and the more in tune we become with our natural state, then it doesn't become shocking or a thing. It doesn't become a thing to even talk about. It's like, well, of course that just happened. Like, of course I needed a lift to Findhorn, and my brother just rocked up and said, do you want to go on a road? Or do you, and it can be anything as small as, needing a stamp to post something, or, it can be things that are seemingly insignificant, and I say that in inverted commas because of course nothing is insignificant, but it can seem fairly mundane to like really extraordinary things that you never would have thought would happen so effortlessly, but that really in our natural state we are always in a position to just receive exactly what we need, and also receive the inspired action to make some of those things happen. It's not about necessarily being passive, but I love synchronicities. They're like my favorite thing.
Here's a question, right? Because I'm guessing I probably know the answer to this. Do both of you guys are you synchronicity watchers? Do you I wouldn't say live your life by it, but are you governed when the universe speaks? Because I know I am. I know that
I trust myself more than anything else.
You what? Sorry, Rachel.
I trust myself more than anything else.
Yeah. Will you then, let's say if the universe kind of gives you a signal which you believe you're recognizing, will you respond to that signal and do something that may be completely out of character and or completely change direction in some ways?
It may not
if you think
mean,
it's it might, yeah, exactly, if that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I would say that it's there to show us something about ourselves and to bring us back to our own connection. It doesn't necessarily mean green light, go ahead and do that thing somebody's just presented to you.
Yeah.
At one time I was like that, and I got some harsh
yeah. I'm guessing that's a mistake we've all made.
The school of hard knocks.
Yeah.
The hard knocks. So it's kind of like be in my power and use discernment and see where that's leading. And just because you've got one synchronicity doesn't mean that's the one flow to go with. You can bypass that one, going nah.
You know, it's so weird.
Another one, but you trust. It's a partnership for me. It's a partnership between what's presented and my own kind of
100%. I think that the universe can line up a path. It can show you a path, but it can't walk that path. And I think that in order to manifest certain things into reality, let's say, there's an element of the physicality of doing, isn't there? I think of actually, following it through in reality in some ways. If I'm going to go off a deep end and start talking about strange stuff, I guess for me, it's kind of like you talking about the different frequencies. I guess ultimately we're just a collection of about 20 different particles that are ultimately governed by 4 different processes that are ultimately just in a sea of energy, and those different processes excite those sea of particles, and that's what we call life. And it really is not much more than that, but it is quite, like you say, quite about frequencies. So I'm going to use this analogy, the analogy of a river. Are there some of us in the river that are the rocks that are directing people into certain pathways, let's say, and creating new frequencies in order for people to follow to a path to the bottom? I mean, obviously, like most rivers, I guess, the energy is going to flow from point A to point B. It's going to go from top to bottom. And there are many different ways to get to the bottom of the river, aren't there? I guess, many different ways, different flows to get yourself into, I guess. Is that what happens within life? Do we kind of tune into certain people tune into certain frequencies, and then, the paths and the learning and the, I guess, the awakening then begin to open up as a result of those paths?
Well,
wow.
sounded a lot less mixed up in my head.
I would say that the universe source is manifesting in infinite possibilities. So there is no right or wrong way. We are simply on a trajectory from source, and we are kind of sent in these different directions just to explore all possibilities.
Do you believe in the idea then of things like the Akashic record, that we can access, let's say, an infinite source of information and energy, and then actually bring it through ourselves in some respects? I mean, when we look back at some of the greatest songs that have ever been written in history, literally the most famous pieces of artwork, the most famous, amazing pieces of scientific understanding or discovery, most of which came from somebody having a dream, an imagination, a thought, or being struck by something from the universe. Is there something in that?
Yeah, look at Tesla. Look at Mozart. The greats out there. Einstein talked about imagination being the most valuable commodity, to paraphrase what he said.
Absolutely. I think there's a post that I did quite a while back, actually. It said, logic will take you from A to B, but imagination will take you anywhere.
I'm still kind of stuck on your last question, dude. Sorry.
No, jump in, Gwen.
I was so blown away by your last question. I was like, wait, the rocks and the river and the and
everybody in that.
I was starting to receive my download what to say, and then the next question, you're like, anyway,
no, dude.
Records and
tell me about it. This is why it's impossible to keep a track in these sorts of interviews. I'm the same. I'm sitting here thinking, hang on a minute, I've got 7 different existential crises going on at the same time, all of which are going to lead to a question. Let me bring you back to the rocks then, Gwen. What do you think about it?
I don't mind. I need grounding, clearly. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so if I can, I mean, there was so much in that question, but what I was kind of being shown and what I was starting to get a sense of is how, as we start to open up and we start to go through life and we start to recognize more synchronicities or feel like there's maybe something more significant, or there's more of an attraction, shall we say, like the synchronicities feel better than not, or than ignoring them, is that it can get quite confusing and wanting to like define what is what and who is who, and some, like Rachel was saying, sometimes I guess I would say early on in the game you can get really excited and be like, oh, I just said I wanted to be in a film. Oh, this guy just messaged me and said, do you want to be in a film? Oh, that must mean I need to be in this film. Rather than, and like really learning, actually, no, it's about just tuning in every step of the way and feeling the frequency of what's being offered, because actually that's part of the learning of how we're weaving our creation, or what we're here to create. And so with this river, and I think you said some people the rocks, that somehow in your question, that was really what stood out for me the most, because it can be like making these decisions to follow what seem like signals, which or are signals, but aren't necessarily what will feel like the most loving or the most fun or the most joyful. And that people can really start to appear like the rocks, as in getting in the way or feeling uncomfortable, feeling like the discomfort of the experience. But what I was feeling as you were asking that was really how we are the river, we are the rocks, we are the bank of the river, we are the clouds in the sky, we are the birds that are singing, with the trees next to the bank, with a person standing in there going, what the fuck is this all about? Sorry, I shouldn't have said. With a person standing in there in the river going, how did I get in here and what am I doing? And or the person laying down in the river going, oh, this is amazing, wow, how did I not get here sooner? So really, for me, it's been starting to realize how every single experience is serving me in some way of deepening and strengthening my connection to this mystery that we call life. And there's so many answers and things that people can bring to the table, but ultimately, it's like Rachel was saying, it's so individual. And we have 10 minutes left, so I don't know, should we
no, keep going
now and carry on? and how actually these seeming struggles and these coming up against things can be what really okay, so I work with sonic alchemy or frequency alchemy or whatever you want to call it, and these elements are just as important as everything else, because they really help us, or have helped me and help us to go deep and create a much deeper transformation from the inside out. And all I've ever experienced is that when the transformation happens from the inside out, everything else kind of falls into place. And that to me is like the biggest shift that we're in with consciousness, is just realizing that nothing is outside of us.
Do you know, it's weird, because I mentioned earlier about this light being experience I had when we were talking off air, and that was one of the things that I came back with. And this is one of the things that I see many people in these kind of fields who often kind of come to these kind of conclusions, that there is no difference. There's no difference between anything. The only difference between it is just another viewpoint of consciousness viewing itself from another viewpoint,
And what it feels like from the human perspective, which can be absolute excruciating pain or absolute exquisite bliss or anything in between, and fluctuate and, have its own dance. But ultimately also like really being able to be grateful for the experiences that can sometimes be so painful, but be actually what's part of the catalyst to bring us into these greater states of expansion that on some level our souls signed up for, and we're like, let's do this.
It's weird, because I mean, coming back to the analogy of the river, I guess we all play that part, you know, whatever it is in the process of the river. I guess to paraphrase Alan Watts, you know, you're not a drop of ocean, you know, you're not a droplet in the ocean, you're something that the whole ocean is doing, or something like this, you know. In that respect, I guess at various points in our life, whatever the purpose is, and it comes back to what Rachel was saying about you having to be in certain places or learn certain things, you know, at some points maybe your destiny is to be that rock, at other points your destiny is to be worked away so much by the flow of life that you're able to make your way down, you know, as a smaller stone. And maybe even sometimes you can be the leaf that makes its way right to the bottom in record quick time, you know, because you're so in tune with whatever it is. I find it really fascinating, actually. I knew that it'd go like this.
Yeah, well, what I was going to say actually is that, like, you know, I mean, I don't know if I'm being a rock for someone or not. Like, there could have been something that I've just said in the last.
No, surely this comes down to viewpoint.
That feels like a rock to someone else, but also feels like soothing flowing water to someone else, or feels like sunshine to someone else, or feels like standing on a bramble to someone else, or, you know, so it's really, it comes down to the experience of every individual. And in the same way that in my experience, someone can appear like a massive boulder in the way to me, but if someone else was in having my experience, which isn't actually really possible, but, you know, they wouldn't see that person or feel that person as a rock. They'd be like, oh no, that's a stepping stone, or, you know. So it really comes down to perspective and honoring the myriad of rainbow multi-dimensional perspectives that are available, but then always coming back to this connection and going, okay, so what's happening? How do I feel? What do I need? What's in my, what am I being shown? What are my feelings? Is my physical body? What's my emotions? What's my mental state? And just learning to, for me, it's like about learning, really giving the parts of us that make up our experience here the attention and the space to not only express themselves, but be seen and be heard. And there's so much scope for healing and reharmonizing our experience here through doing that.
That's so cool. Rachel, I'm going to put it back to you. I'm going to suggest that the very famous Mick Jagger was actually a consciousness explorer and quantum physicist of exceptional proportions, because I believe the Rolling Stones once wrote a song that said something along the lines of, what is it now? You can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. Is that the way the universe works?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Told you he was a consciousness explorer.
Yeah, definitely. From what Gwen was saying, I think we've all got our parts to play in multiple different ways. But I think from each of our own perspective, it's about what is the most expansive, what's the most expansive way forward, what's going to, you know, bring us the most growth from the experience, however painful or however, you know, joyful it is.
Oh, dude, that's really. I know I've used this river analogy today, but I think that's quite nice, actually. That's kind of point. Is that we all play our part ultimately, I guess, in terms of creating this world. And I guess it's, you know, it's our journey in some respects to find others that are of like mind and join together and create a stronger flow in that respect.
Absolutely, and it feels to me like that is actually happening naturally. You know, the more in tune you become with yourself, the more people just kind of show up in your life, and it can happen anywhere.
Definitely.
It can happen at a train station, it can happen in the middle of nowhere or in the middle of a city. There's no limitation in terms of like with soul connections and soul family. You know, that's something I started to recognize it as, was soul families coming back together, and our souls calling us together and recognizing each other. And so, for example, you know, meeting Rachel at some vegan fair 2 years ago, and you know, in the queue for some vegan lasagna or something, and you know, and she's just like, hey, so I can't remember if you were like, where are you from or something, and I just was like, said some intergalactic star child response or something. You know, it was like, and I normally wouldn't say that to someone I just met, but it's like we can feel each other's frequencies. And so blah, blah, you know, some light language came out, something that, and she was like, oh, So
I was actually to fill in the my side of the story there.
Yeah.
Actually, just prior to that, I was just about to leave with my partner at the time, and I was like, you know what? I need to turn around and go back. Speak to someone. And I saw Gwen there, our mutual friend, and I saw Gwen, and I mentioned the Multidimensional Show, and she just like lit up, and she said, "Oh, I speak light language." It's like, I was like, yeah, that's so right. Aboard, you know?
It's some of the best.
It feels like it's gathering momentum, like it's happening more and more. Like the frequencies on the planet are supporting this kind of thing so much more, you know, and it's also realizing how supported we are and being able to receive that and acknowledge that. Because, yeah, you know, like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, yeah, there were things coming through, of course. And, you know, you were speaking about artists and scientists, and it's like they would be able to get to these spaces where they could just connect and bring amazing downloaded artwork, creative stuff through, and but not necessarily be able to live it. Like not necessarily have harmonious relationships.
No,
not necessarily.
very, very interesting. Provide a window for the rest of the universe to look through, but ultimately, not, you know, can't manage it themselves. I mean, so many artists live in fear, depression, God knows whatever else, don't they? But give the universe the most amazing pieces of artwork. Yeah,
and now it's like, but that was also partly to do with just the frequency of the planet and where people were at in our evolution, and now it's, you know, it's increased, it's amplified.
It's an interesting point, actually, Gwen, because I believe this. I mean, and I certainly respect, you know, see this in my own life. When you're kind of open to these experiences, when you're kind of waiting for the magic to happen on a day-to-day basis, you tend to see a lot more, don't you? You tend to see a lot more of these amazing connections, these amazing situations. Whereas if you run around, you know, never looking above the Greg sign in town and constantly, you know, head down in your phone and shut off from these outside kind of ideas and these, you know, points of the universe, I guess many people can go right the way through their lives without ever experiencing them. Are all of these things happening then because so many more people have the right intention or are focused in the right ways?
The Asylum.
Wicked. Thanks so much for speaking to us then tonight, guys, from the Multidimensional Show. We've got Rachel Murphy on the line and, of course, Gwen Harrison. Rachel, just tell us quickly, just to recap, how can people get tickets? When's it on? What's the website? All of those kind of things.
Okay, so people can get tickets at www.multidimensionalshow.co.uk. If they go to the event page and scroll down just a little bit, they'll see the Book Now button, and they'll see lots of information there about the speakers too. And it's on the 11th of November, Saturday 11th of November, starting at 9:30, finishing at 4:30. That's 11/11. So you can't forget that date. It's a very significant date.
11/11.
So go and get your tickets. Early bird tickets are on sale.
That's wicked. I'm expecting like moments of amazing synchronicity at 11/11.
Yeah. Expect it and you will see it.
I know, I'm just thinking that now. You know, you watch, I'll be pointing to my watch going, it's 11/11, Rachel, look what's going on right now. Be weird. So we're going to finish off as well. A little piece from you, Gwen, some sonic therapy, I believe it is. Gwen, what's your website again, sorry?
So my website is godivasonicalchemy.com.
Dude, it sounds really nice, just rolling off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Godiva Sonic Alchemy.
So if anyone wants to find out more about what I do or contact me, then just go and check it out. And there's some videos, some sound activation recordings, some guided meditations, and also you can contact me to book any private sessions.
That's cool. On your website, Gwen, is that you dancing?
Yeah.
Got some moves, girl, haven't you?
Thank you.
Busting them shapes. That's
Yeah. Well, I'm actually busting light codes, but maybe that's for another conversation.
Well, it's funny you mention that because that's how I always describe my dancing.
Yeah, I mean, a while ago I started drawing the codes for light language, and then it started being incorporated into my dancing, and then so is my body essentially drawing these light codes.
See, now, last time I was stopped outside the toilets dancing by the bouncer, and I said to him, I'm drawing light codes. He didn't take the same view that I took. Well, wasn't feeling it in the same. He's like, dude, stop standing on your head, and really seriously, you know. No, that's really interesting. I saw that, and you've got some really cool moves as well. So, what are you going to do for us to finish off, Gwen?
So I'm just going to bring through some sound and some light language to assist people. Yeah, give you a little taster in what I do, and assisting people, and assisting the audience and anyone listening, and you guys to enhance and receive a deeper connection with your true source and infinite nature.
Now, this is cool because I've always used music on the Asylum for exactly this reason. We could just talk for 3 hours, but I believe that music allows people to learn a little bit more. It allows you to reflect, it allows you to learn, it allows the information to reside and to resonate with inside you. Helps learning and stuff like this.
It's a resonant frequency that our body and our cells and our consciousness responds to. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's an amazing tool, and the more I've worked with it, I've been on such an incredible journey that is ever unfolding. But just really starting to realize that sound is actually physical. You know, it creates an atmosphere and a resonance that we are constantly interacting with, and so it's always been my part of my mission, I guess, to be the clearest channel that I can be, to bring through the purest frequencies for transformation.
Right, I'm ready, young girl. I'm kind of feeling relaxed. I've got myself in the moment. I'm hoping the listeners have done the same, and I'm ready to bust out my light language dance skills.
Yeah, of course. Feel free to move if you feel inspired.
Gwen, I've been moving for the last 2.5 minutes as we've been talking.
Yeah, good. I like to hear that. So so if everyone just either takes a moment to find themselves sitting comfortably, or maybe even laying down, or they might want to stand. You know, there's no rules with this apart from following what feels good to you.
I'll lie down.
Yeah, lie down, Rachel. So just taking some deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth, and as you exhale, if you want to make some sound, that's a really good way to help you release and just give your body permission to let go. And I'm just going to start bringing through the sound and the light language, and just keeping your attention on your breath. And just relaxing and receiving. Sharaina Taraina Taraya Yoto Kora Samaya Naso. La yara shitiana como sarai niña la sarai ni tauroko.
Gwen, that was crazy.
I was going to say, when you're ready.
No, I was just kind of just chilling there, just blissed
back.
out. Yeah, I was just relaxed, listening. Dude, there's like a crazy resonance in your voice. That's mad. You're like one of the. You're really chilled out, aren't you? Just kind of really blissed out. Like, yeah, okay, cool. Wicked. Thanks for that. Thanks for speaking to us, Gwen, and thanks for doing a little demonstration as well. I'm looking forward to that on the day, actually. That's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it might be quite different on the day. It's like, it just depends what wants to come through, but that's just a little taster of how it can appear.
No, it's interesting, isn't it, the way that sound and frequency has an impact on the very kind of inner part of yourself in many ways.
Definitely. Yeah, it's really mind-blowing, soul-blowing.
It's amazing how it can kind of induce sort of out-of-body experiences almost. I mean, I've only ever done it sort of once, really, using chanting and things like this, but it instantly puts you in that meditative state, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it starts to, one of the things that happened to me a couple of years ago is I started to be, I just spontaneously started using my voice like a singing bowl. And, being able to move the sound around and feeling different parts of my body and sometimes my whole body, like this resonator, like this singing bowl, and of course with singing bowls, when you hear or these sounds are created and these waveforms are created, whatever's in that space will start to attune to those frequencies and start to vibrate at those frequencies. So yeah, it's really, really powerful. And then when you start to vibrate at those frequencies, things open up, and also all kinds of amazing spontaneous healing can occur, and shifting that I have found quite often, shifts that are sort of ready to happen and have been waiting to happen for some time. This kind of sound can create such a relaxed state through all of your multidimensional experience, that shifts can just naturally happen without really having to do anything. You don't have to necessarily go into a past life or work out what happened in your childhood, or of course some of these things can be what comes up and needs looking at, but there's this much more like holistic like space that's opened for energy to move where it's trying to get to, and quite often we don't allow the energy to, and so this can sort of this can induce radical surrender. It's one of the many things. But,
it nearly did in me then. No, I'm only joking. It's fascinating, isn't it, how music and sound and frequency and all of those things can really, like I say, resonate within a person and open. It's interesting, isn't it? Like I say, you can create that kind of emotion and feeling within a person, and maybe I should be chanting every morning when I wake up. Maybe I should like breakfast, like spiritually, I should start my day by chanting naked on a hill. No, maybe not naked, but chanting anyway.
Well, maybe not on a hill, but naked. Real.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, chanting is an amazing way to connect with these kind of frequencies. But again, it's all about intention, and you can chant from a space of from any frequency and from any space. And I suppose that's what I was referring to when I was saying that for me the priority is being the clear channel, so that whatever comes through is the purest frequencies for people to be assisted with. Because I actually grew up in a Buddhist household, and there was a lot of chanting.
I can imagine, actually. Gwen, go on, sorry, Gwen.
No, Harriet, what were you saying?
No, please, after you, young lady. That's quite all right.
Okay, so growing up in this Buddhist household, or where Buddhism was a big part of my upbringing, I always found it quite interesting how I never wanted to go anywhere near the meetings. And for me, Buddhist meetings was like, who brought the best biscuits? And there wasn't really anything about well, the Buddhist meetings would happen in people's houses, so people would bring biscuits and to eat after all the chanting. So as a child, I mean, okay, obvious reasons the biscuits are more
I see
appealing.
What you're saying now. I see what
but
you're
also
saying.
like so but as I, while I've been on this journey, and a lot of the healing that I've gone through myself, kind of either assisted or spontaneously, or I really began to realize that part of my part of my resistance to, and my lack of resonance with the chanting that I would experience growing up, was that actually the frequency that was being, the sound frequency that was being built in these spaces was actually really not that healing. And that can, that can also happen. Sound is not just healing. Sound is any frequency. And so that was a big part of my realization, was also the importance of the frequencies that I tune into, and that it's not just about the chanting, but the chanting is the tool to express the frequency, and that can come through any expression. It doesn't have to just be sound. It can be the food that you make, it can be the way you get dressed, it can be it's really not what you're doing, it's how and why and where it's coming from. So,
I guess there are many ways to sing a song then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it might kind of even if it sounds the same, it will feel very different.
Gwen, thanks ever so much for speaking to us, dude. Thanks for that little insight into what it is that you do as well, and for the conversation tonight. Rachel, thank you for speaking to us. I know you're back in a couple of minutes as well, aren't you, young lady? We've got Cara St. Louis and Barbara Chabior on the way next.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
Wicked. Thanks so much for speaking to us, guys. We'll leave you there, and we'll play out with this awesome piece of music for you on the Asylum.
Thank you so much, Ian. See you at the show.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Wicked. I'm going to be buying you a coffee and tapping both your girls' brains and telling you. For sure.
As you move deeper into the silence and gloom, the need to find it from inside. The sound is arising. Behold, its waves are calling you home. So let your heart be the space for the song to unfold, and let your love be the waves for the sound to evolve. As you move Wouldn't let your love be the space for the song to unfold, and let your love be the waves for the sound to evolve.
Good evening and welcome back to the Asylum on 107.3 Stafford FM, live from the beating decellularized heart of the county. It's me, Gunnar, in a chair of destiny. I'm joined this week by a group from the Multidimensional Show. We've got the organiser, Rachel, on the line. Good evening, Rachel.
Hi, Ian.
How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Very well.
Wicked. And we're also joined by Cara St. Louis as well. Or is it Lewis?
Either way, it's fine. People kind of just tend to choose which one they like, you know?
Oh,
I
okay.
say St. Louis, but I think in French it's Saint Louis. So you say whatever you want, okay? But hi, Ian.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really good.
And
Thanks
we're
for
also joined by Barbara Chabior as well.
Hello.
Hello, Barbara, how are you?
I'm very well.
Cool. We'll go back to the beginning. Rachel, just explain to us who you are then, buddy, and what it is that you're doing, because you've got the Multidimensional Show, haven't you, coming up on the 11th of November?
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be a day of talks on various subjects around consciousness, around our origins, the secrets of this planet, of our reality. And I've invited Cara and Barbara to talk alongside me that day. We'll also have some practitioners and some stalls there. So it's going to be a full day, and there's going to be a performance as well.
Now, Rachel Murphy, I am so looking forward to this. This show is about bringing a greater awareness, isn't it, to our wider reality, combining science, humanities, spirituality with talks from the field of quantum physics, metaphysics, history, psychology, and consciousness. And you've got speakers to bring, I guess, about exactly that conversation. Two of which we've got here today as well, Cara and both Barbara.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Wicked. Rachel, how long has this been going on? It's been a couple of years, hasn't it, the Multidimensional Show?
It's actually been a year.
A year? I was going to say, I know you did it last year. It must feel like 10, I guess, when you were organising events.
It does feel like 10, yeah. Yeah.
Whereabouts is it? How can we find out about tickets, and where can we purchase them from?
Okay, so the actual event is at All Saints Centre in Kings Heath, Birmingham. And tickets available via Eventbrite, but people can go to the website multidimensionalshow.co.uk and go to the event page where they can book now. Click on that link and it will take you to the ticket box.
Wicked. And it's just the 11th of November, is it? You have about 2 a year now, don't you?
Yes, yeah. I'm branching out to April and November. And I'm looking to extend it to other parts of the UK.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think this is a great idea as well, because there's lots of, let's say, paranormal events around the country. There's lots of sort of ufological events around the country. There aren't always that many kind of that bridge to the gaps almost. Do you feel that this is what this kind of event does?
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of a big part of it, is drawing all these different areas together and bringing the holistic field, bringing the science field, and bringing the ufologists together, as you say. And that way we can get a bigger picture and get a fuller picture of what's going on and what's going on for us.
Do you know, I find that really interesting, because when I started the Asylum a few years ago, initially I think they wanted me to talk about UFOs and the paranormal and things like this. But straight away, the moment I started the show, I kind of felt that all of these things are interconnected. You know, that history, technology, science, politics, spirituality, religion, all of these things kind of come together, don't they, surrounding these fields?
Yeah. I mean, it's impossible really to kind of like compartmentalize it, and I think that's been a big problem. Generally in humanity, in our knowledge and understanding, it's the compartmentalization of our knowledge, and I think that's where we definitely need to be talking to each other, and different disciplines and different fields need to be talking to each other, and to get this deeper understanding.
Absolutely, Rachel. So we're joined firstly by Cara. Cara, just tell us a little bit about yourself. I've got some information about you here. It says you're an author, researcher, journalist who has many years of investigative material to share from the world of social engineering, the truth behind the mass media and historical misinformation of our human race, to the myths and reality of the Fae, a starseed race. I so want to talk to you about that existed on this planet until they were wiped out. History books, of course, have been censored to omit the truth about many things, including this to fit in with a narrow paradigm, the status quo. However, Cara, of course, will be unveiling some hard facts to suggest there is a multidimensional reality during your talk. So, Cara, just tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you, Ian. I will. Whoever wrote that, did you write that, Rachel? That was brilliant.
I did,
Thank
yeah.
you. Wow. Well done, Rachel. Wow. Okay. Okay, let me tell you about myself in case you haven't figured it out yet. Yes, I'm an American. I come from the American Southwest, in the Four Corners region. I grew up in New Mexico. Indeed, I am a writer and also a teacher. I've been a teacher for decades, but I've written, I got into this field, as many people do, through chemtrails, because it's very easy. That's an easy entry point. You can see those in the sky. If you haven't noticed the wacky stuff that's going on over the United Kingdom in the last couple of days, I invite you to look up, okay? Because there's some crazy stuff going on right now.
Oh, yes.
When I pulled into the station today, coming back from St. Anne's to London, the sun was yellow/red. There's stuff going on right now, and there's stuff going on in Northern California, which I'll talk about at some point if you want me to. But yes, I started by writing about. My second book was about chemtrails, called The Sun Thief, and I talk about always talk about that a little bit in my lectures, because you need to know why you care what I have to say about anything, And then I wrote a book called Dangerous Imagination, Silent Assimilation, which is about the social engineering, which really got started in the 20th century. And I can tell you for sure now that social engineering, they started to bear down on us sometime between 200 and 400 years ago, when, by the way, the Draco, who were in control of this planet for a very long time, decided they weren't interested anymore and took off. And they left it in the stewardship, if you will. They abandoned it to, if you will, the human partners they've been working with, and they invited the human partners to reveal everything, to tell us what was going on, and to share the technological information that they had. And the human beings decided they weren't going to do that. They were going to keep that to themselves. And that is when the demonic levels of manipulation began, between 200 and 400 years ago. And you can actually trace that back to about 1780, but really in about 1805, when the Prussian school education system was rolled out. Okay, so that's a pretty big part of my work, social engineering. I've just released the second edition that covers as well. There's a huge section on the psychiatric industry, which is really just an extension of the Inquisition. Okay, and then I was commandeered, if you will, into working to get the Fae. The Fae have not been wiped out. They very much of their own volition decided to wed themselves to the planet in ways that we really have a hard time understanding now. Although I think we're coming to a consciousness where we can understand where, quote unquote, where they actually are. Okay, and one of the reasons, so I wrote a book with Maria Wheatley called Guardians of Blood and Fire, The Search for the Celtic Heart. And I just did a lecture on this last night. And what I always tell people is the elementals and all of those wonderful things at the bottom of your garden that absolutely do exist and require us to honor them and to know them and to be very aware of their work in our world is not Fae. And it's just as much an insult to those entities as it is to the Fae to mix those things up, okay? The Fae is a seed race. The Fae is a seed race that is hundreds of thousands of years old, and they are an entity that appears to us at times of transition. And right now we are at a massive time of transition. They're also our seed race. What they're trying to do is they're not a savior race. Any kind of story that comes to you that has a savior motif is Draco savior programming. They're trying to remind us that we are as well the original magicians and that we are descendants of theirs. And so all we really need to do is remember who we are and access who we really are. And this is what all this social engineering is about, Ian. This avalanche of social engineering pouring down all over us is only about trying to make sure we do not remember who we are. Okay?
Is this what you mean then, Cara, when you talk about social engineering? You mean the way, I guess, humans are manipulated over a period of time in order to get them to a particular place?
Right, absolutely. And I've added a couple of things to my lecture on social engineering, one of which is a big part of social engineering was the eradication of hemp, believe it or not.
Right.
That may or may not be, some of you will get that instantly, and some of you might have to think about that a little bit, but this planet used to be covered in hemp, carpeted in hemp.
It's actually quite a hardy weed, isn't it, really?
Well, it's a healing plant. It's actually one of the two sacred plants. The two sacred plants are hemp and tobacco, okay? They've both been bastardized like crazy. And hemp, 100 years ago or so, it's been a little bit more than 100 years now, was completely demonized in the United States by William Randolph Hearst, who decided to couch it in this reefer madness nonsense.
Reefer madness. Oh, goodness.
Right? That's right. And right now, I will tell you right now, I'm going to be in Northern California on December the 1st. I might be standing in a patch of charred ruins because a great part of Northern California is on fire right now. Yeah. It looks like it looks like Hiroshima, really, a lot of it. And right smack dab in the middle of that is this area called the Emerald Triangle. And guess what they grow there? Just guess.
The Emerald Triangle.
Emerald Triangle, right?
Hang on a minute. Now, because you just mentioned hemp, so I'm going to put two and two together here. I did hear something like they reckon large fields of cannabis, basically, or hemp, have been set on fire, haven't they, during these Californian wildfires?
Yes, they absolutely have. And just a few days before California becomes a legal recreational state.
Oh, really? I thought California, obviously medicinal cannabis, I thought that was already passed in law, wasn't it, in California?
Well, there are levels. And Big Pharma and Monsanto, even though Monsanto's now been bought by a German company, or at least in process of being bought by a German company, Bayer, by the way, they want a piece of the action, baby. They want to put GMO hemp out there. They don't want this natural stuff because that's healing. It belongs to us. It belongs to us. The planet used to be covered in this carpet of hemp. Anyway, that is a really profound example of social engineering. Taking that away from us, taking that away from the planet. Okay? Anyway, the Fae are rising to a consciousness again for another reason. First of all, I'm thinking, based on the talks that I've been giving around the United Kingdom recently, that mostly you guys were not paying attention to this eclipse that just happened, that bifurcated the United States, cut it right in half on a diagonal. And they started calling it the Great American Eclipse, okay? This is important. This is really, really important. My friend and lecturing partner, Shane the Ruiner, I don't know if you've ever heard of Shane the Ruiner, but if you haven't, you need to. Shane Bales, comes from two Illuminati families, renegade from two Illuminati families, said that, that was a splice. He said that was an etheric splice when that happened. And what that was we are already under one form of artificial intelligence. It's a holograph, it's a holographic program, but it's on the order of something like, if you remember the old Star Trek, computer and program kinds of things. It's like that, yeah. This is a different thing. This is a splicing together of the organic, where the organic leaves off and the artificial intelligence knits together, and it makes it even harder for us to tell the difference. Okay, that's what that eclipse was about. Okay. Now, having said that, I will say the reason this becomes even more important is because there's another artificial intelligence that's sort of hovering around in the background, waiting for an opportunity to descend on us as well. There are like two AIs kind of fighting it out right now. If that one does manage to work its way in to our sphere, then we really will be the batteries for the Matrix. We will lose our connection to the organic, and we will lose our connection to the Fae. We are sort of at the turn of the tide, my friend. It's really, really important. It's one of the reasons I've sort of committed myself for the foreseeable future, to talking about nothing but the Fae, because they're trying to hand us back our magic.
So just tell us, Cara, who are the Fae? Because I went to Ireland this year, and
Yeah.
I had some exceptionally strange experiences whilst I was there. I went to see, I don't know if you know, Barry Fitzgerald, who used to be on Ghost Hunters International. I saw from the look on your face there, you recognise that name. Do you know Lachine House in Ireland?
No.
Lachine House was a place that was owned by a guy called Owen Phibbs, I believe in the 1800s. And it was either him or his son. He was in the army, and his son, I believe, was an anthropologist, archaeologist. And he went out to Egypt, and he brought back all of these artifacts. He brought back things like swords, Syrian swords, Egyptian mummies, this sort of stuff. Now, apparently, what had happened was a jinn entity had been bound to one of these objects, which he brought back and he placed inside his house in Ireland. Now, Lachine House is actually, I believe it means Ring of Fae or Ring of Fair or something like this. So it's actually built on a fairy ring. And what they believe had happened, and now from what Barry tells me, they believe they're quite sort of distant cousins, the Fae and the Jinn, I guess. Or they're very similar entities kind of thing. But this kind of thing magnified and became a massive kind of the worst ever, I believe, poltergeist case ever in Ireland. Lasted for something like nearly 100 years. So,
well, the Jinn have nothing to do with the Fae. I will tell you that right now. This is part of what we have to figure out. And there are lecturers out there of some renown in respect who are just doing some lazy thinking. It's easier to lump the Fae in with the Jinn and archons and demons and all of those things and call it a big bag of bad things. That's not what it is at all. In fact, Jinn and demons are very different from each other. Demons and archons are very different from each other, and archons and Fae are very different from each other.
Cara?
Doing that.
Cara, just pop your headphones back in for me, lovely.
They are. Have I disappeared?
No, I can hear you. It's just there's a little bit of noise in the background. I think it might be the headphones.
No, it's not. This kind of thing happens when I start talking about.
No, dude, because I had exactly these same experiences in Ireland. The moment you kind of end, I thought this stuff was myth and legend, and then I went to Ireland, and it hugely changed my opinion. It hugely changed my opinion because we saw a number of things that took place there that kind of left me feeling that this stuff is not only real, but you know, it's very, very powerful as well. So, explain to us a little bit about the fair then.
The Fae.
The Fae.
Okay, well, the Fae this is our original seed race. I mean, I can't give you a whole lecture, but if you want a heads up or a head start on my lecture, I can recommend one thing that you can do because the bardic tales are important, both in their face value and sorting them out, which I do in the middle of the lecture on a multidimensional level, because like any good tale, they contain lots of Twilight language, okay? Listen to Robin Williamson, Megalithomania 2009, do the Battle of Moytura, okay?
Yeah.
It's 1 hour or a little bit less. Brilliant rendition of one of the only two oral tales that are left, okay? Because I talk about that in my lecture. We take that apart a little bit, okay? First of all, they came from another planet. They came from another planet. My contention is they came at the transition between Lemuria and a more material, solid world. And they landed in Ireland. And I'm not the first person by any stretch of the imagination to locate our origins in Ireland. I mean, just listen to Tessarian's work, you know? This is not new. But I go through my work on this is about 70% research-based, evidence-based, which is nice. That's why Maria wanted to be part of the book, because it's 60-70% evidence-based. The rest of it, like it is for all of us, is inference, intuition, connecting the dots. You know what I mean? Anyway, so I can tell you that I have evidence, what I consider to be very good evidence that they are our seed race, and that they've been around at least to the point where the Catholic Church conquered Ireland, and they decided to withdraw, if you will. You know, the Roman army was able to conquer Ireland. That's because of the Druids, the Druidic, the Fae magic. You know, they couldn't manage it, but the Church managed to get in there over a period of time. All right. Anyway, that's when the Fae withdrew into the planet. The remnants of the Fae are both the She, S-I-D-H-E, which Maria writes about, and us. We are them. We are the She. We are the Fae. Okay. We are simply their descendants. And I can tell you, I can show you, I believe, how there was, up until quite recently, a global civilization. I mean, Ian, the scientists will say, oh my goodness me, I see the same things in Peru that I see in Finland.
Absolutely.
How is that possible? This is uncanny. It's not uncanny, it's simple. There was a global civilization. And there are lots and lots of scientists, archaeologists and etymologists, and all kinds of people like Marie Wheatley, megalith specialists.
I've got to say, Cara, the evidence for a sort of a pre-flood civilization of great kind of importance is huge, isn't it? There's an awful lot of evidence and information out there to say that we're a species that lives with amnesia. We don't know our origins. We don't know where we come from.
Right. And I will remind you now that I said up to a couple hundred years ago, it existed.
And like I say, the people in Ireland, genuinely, the people in, I mean, like I say, you know, for me in England, I might believe it to be myth or legend, or I might have thought it was. But the people in Ireland don't feel that, do they? You know, they certainly believe that these things are real.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, sure, I'm sure that many of them do. But what I've also learned in giving this lecture is, and this is really important, Ian, interestingly enough, everybody has a really heartfelt, special vision, their own vision of what they think this world of the Fae is, okay? They hold it dear to them. It's very dear to them, whether it's the fairy world or the world of the elementals or whatever it is that they characterize this particular dimension as. It means a lot to them, and so I try to take great care when I bring this subject, and I have to separate those things. So to be able to say what the Irish feel about these legends, you know, that will be in their own hearts, whatever it is, you know. So also remember that the amnesia is not self-inflicted. The amnesia has been laid on us. So.
Do you think that's a deliberate deception then, or do you think that's just part and parcel of us? Do you think there's a combination of those two things? That maybe there's a genuine piece of amnesia, and then also then the I guess the collusion or the dictation to us of this hidden knowledge.
No, I don't think that we had anything to do with it. Why would we want to walk away from our own power?
Absolutely.
I think it was laid right on us 200 to 400 years ago by the human beings who decided they wanted to control this planet.
So yeah, absolutely. So they're taking that spiritual nature, I guess, and then redirecting that energy.
Yeah. Now we have to throw it off. We have to throw that mantle off now.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the Fae from a different planet. Do you believe they are physical and terrestrial in the way that we are, or do you believe that they're multidimensional?
That's an interesting question, isn't it? Right now, they're certainly multidimensional, and it helps to be able to think. It helps to be able to think about space in a different way, and it helps to be able to think about our planet in a different way. I tend to agree with, there's a particular astrophysicist called Juliana Conforto. She's Italian. She's got some things in English on YouTube you can listen to. Her postulate, and I think that she's probably absolutely correct, is that in fact, really, all the planets are nestled inside each other like Russian dolls.
Wow.
And it is the fractal nature of both of what we might consider space around us, but it's not really space. It's sort of a plasma around us, interacting with our eyes. We sort of, it's like a hall of mirrors. We see things out there, and that's great, because as human beings, we need to have them out there in order to observe them. Okay, in order to interact with them, in order to think about them and make them part of our consciousness and that sort of thing. But in fact, all of the planets really exist in the same space. That helps people understand where the Fae are right now as well. If I say that they were wedded to the Earth, if they decided to become wedded to the Earth in ways that we have a hard time understanding these now, that helps them make sense of that. Another thing that helps them make sense of that is that you may have read some stories recently about the hurricanes in the United States, and also the Mississippi River, which is a mighty, mighty river. The water is receding. The waters are disappearing in those areas. And I just recently did an interview with Maria Wheatley and asked her about that. She said, and I concur, that the waters are actually retreating to the inside of the earth for healing, that they're actually recoiling from what we are doing to them. Water is a sentient being.
Oh yeah. Now I know Maria talks about similar things, doesn't she? About the earth energies within the water itself that come from deep in the earth.
Yes, absolutely. And so if I say that the water is a sentient being that decided to retreat to the inside of the earth, then I can, and I also say, well, the Fae, as sentient beings, decided to retreat inside the earth at a certain point to recoil from what was being done. It's easier to understand, I think, don't you?
Mm. What's their purpose then on the planet, Cara? Why are they here? Why have they come to see us? Why are they trying to enlighten us spiritually? Are they trying to take us forward in an evolution sense, or are they merely just here because it's a beautiful little blue pearl in the middle of nowhere?
No, they came hundreds of thousands of years ago, and these are the entities that actually set down the ley lines. That's how old they are.
Wow.
Okay? They're not here as tourists, man. They started the whole thing, okay? And we are their descendants, and they are wedded to the earth, which means they are shepherds of this planet. They have an interest in the well-being of this entity that is Sophia, this entity that is the planet, okay? And if the planet goes, the planet's under as much attack as any other sentient being that is in this dimension, this piece of time space. Their job is to protect Sophia. Okay, so part of that is trying to wake us up. Part of that is trying to help us understand that we have enough magic to throw it all off right now if we just connect with it.
Are we important, Cara, or is it the planet?
Yeah. When I say we, I mean you, Ian. Ian, you, right now, have enough magic that if you wake up to it, you can throw the whole thing off.
Yes.
You can take it all stop. You can yank the chemtrails out of the sky, dude. Right now.
Dude, I'm ready for cloud busting. Let's go. I'm ready.
Very important. Everybody, all of it.
So, Cara, this is the talk then you're going to be giving at the Multidimensional Show, I guess?
Yes, it is.
What led you into all of this sort of stuff? How did you begin this kind of research, and how did you find this path?
This particular path was given to me, as is so much when we're on these journeys, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good research coming out. There's outstanding research coming out of both Germany and Russia right now. And I happen to be married to a German, and so he is a rabid researcher. And so when he comes across something he thinks I'd be interested in, of course he brings it to me. So there's a guy in Germany who has spent his life tracking the breadcrumbs of the Fae. And of course I talk about him in the lecture and what his evidence is. This guy is kind of a John Nash character, you know. He just sees patterns everywhere and has put together the most amazing amount of research. So it's part of the scientific research that I'm bringing. It's part of the database evidence. If that's what hooks you into something, you know, if you're listening to this lecture or you want to know more about it, and that's the kind of thing that makes it seem real to you or connects you to it, then there's plenty of that. That's what brought me in. And then once I was in, I was called and compelled to stay in. And every day that goes by, I get more evidence and more communication from the people I know or from dimensions around me that this is my path. And so I'm just going to go ahead and walk it.
I love that. It's amazing. The reason I do radio is for exactly the same. I'm guessing the reasons why Rachel and both Barbara do what they do is almost in many respects a calling, you know, that you would supposed to do this. And so many people I speak to in both ufology, research, you know, paranormal, anything like that. So many people espouse the same exact thing. You know, something changed within their lives. There's a reason why they came to this. They feel there's some sort of mission going on. Are we all part of the change in paradigm, do you think then, Cara?
Yeah, well, we can be. I mean, this is what I was trying to describe with the eclipse, though. it sounds ridiculous that there are two choices to make right now, but in essence there are. There's two choices to make. There is stand for the organic, or there is go with with artificial intelligence and say, woo, the future is here. Let's, fill me full of transhumanism, man, I'm ready. Those are the choices right now. That's where we're at. And one of the things that makes that extraordinarily problematic is that probably for the last 2 or 3 generations, this has all been normalized through gaming. Okay.
The gamification of life, sure.
This is all the way it's supposed to be. Human life is all about being in the next server, right? And we talk about ourselves as machines. All of our language is computer driven, artificial intelligence driven. That's not an accident. That's been going on for 2 or 3 generations. So yeah, we have a choice to make right now, and it's a big deal.
The Asylum.
Welcome back then. You're listening to The Asylum on 107.3 Stafford FM live from the beating decellerarized heart of the county. We've got Rachel Murphy on the line this week from the Multidimensional Show in Birmingham. You can get tickets for that. It is, of course, on the 11th of November. And we're joined by one of the speakers today as well, Barbara Chabior, I believe it is. Barbara has studies and research a variety of disciplines and modalities around well-being, the arts, psychology, and quantum psychic. Together with her rich life experience, she has sought to integrate these together to form her system, the Flove paradigm, I believe it is. She'll be bringing her own insights and philosophy from the perspective of singularity and linking this to the art of living from our limitless potential. That sounds amazing, Barbara. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Bravo, Rachel. Bravo. Linguistic music.
Beautiful.
I'm always amazed at the labeling process and meaning making that we do in order to pluck ourselves out of nameless dread. I've always been curious about what do we do with a sense of meaninglessness in life. And I've become profoundly engaged with not knowing, half knowledge. Poetry kept me going because it's an oblique language. We cannot define everything.
Did you feel then, Barbara, that people within life are looking for some sort of meaning, looking for some sort of the feeling of being alive? We all chase this, don't we? We all fill our lives with meaningless things, iPhones, computers, the latest bit of technology, the latest gadgets, but really ultimately it doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't mean anything. What does mean something to you?
Right. You see, with me, it's very important to follow the impulse. So very much in my life, I measured the time lapse between inner impulse and outer reaction. And you can, Rachel, Yosevian, we all know what it means to respond with a delay to inner calling, to inner impulse. We all know what it means to pretend and not be ourselves. It's tangible physiologically. When you are not telling the truth, when you are not being the truth, and you're not embodying the truth. So so that's very much my research. It's kind of checking what's happening in that gap, and then very much related to mental health illness. I have brothers who are diagnosed with schizophrenia, and they will be part of my PhD, my doctorate. I filmed them in April, and one of the beautiful questions and beautifully answered was, I said, so Joseph, so what is schizophrenia? What is being mental about? And he said, this is when you pretend, when you're not fully yourself. Yeah. When you not telling the truth, how you feel, how you truly feel.
So I guess it's about being authentic, living the life you were supposed to live, I should say.
Yeah. But you see, very often, we grab for a word, and authenticity is a word, is a kind of overplayed. cheesy word right now because everyone is trying to be authentic.
That's why I said that, yeah.
I promote the methodology of flow, which combine the flow and the flow. So it's about being with emotions that are ruling you at the very moment, the here and now, owning it, living it, loving it, expressing it, embodying it. And if it doesn't serve you, letting them go. So with me, it's about enthusiastic, the primary instabilities. Let's put it this way. So that's being present for me when you are engaging with what is.
I guess living in the moment then in some ways.
It is very much so. So if you ask me what's happening to me right now, as much as I'm using words, Ian, I'm sensing my body. If you wanted me to stop using words and keep on with the interview, answering your questions in I don't know, in sounds, in movements, I could easily do that. That's multidimensionality for me. When you are capable of using all languages.
Interesting. So communicating it in a number of different ways then, I'd imagine.
Indeed, yes.
So Barbara, what got you into this then? You were originally, I guess, you're from Poland, aren't you? Were you a dancer as well?
Right. Well, everyone was telling me you should be a dancer, So there is, I tried it. I went to performing arts school and I was the worst ballet dancer ever, you know? And
no.
So, yeah. Maybe because I was under the pressure of doing everything correctly. And you know what softened me up? I did, in that school, I did clowning as well. So the moment I've learned how to live with imperfections and how to honor them and dance with them, my dance, I became a true dancer. So yeah, I'm dancing if you were with me right now, my body is moving and I'm very, very keen on expressing myself in a dance form. There's no judgment there anymore. No, I
was going to say, it's interesting you make that kind of comparison there. The difference between following a set series of steps in order to dance and then expressing yourself from your heart. They're two completely different things, aren't they, in that sense? You know, there's the following the steps and processes, like I say, and then expressing yourself from an inner place in that sense. So I'm guessing you're more about that then, aren't you? You're more about expressing yourself as the way I guess you want to be.
Yes, very much so. So I can give you an example. I can give you share some thinking from my head, heart, and gut.
Okay,
Just show you the different levels that we can communicate from. So right now, I'm going to stay in my head and I'm going to introduce myself. So from my head, all right?
Okay, let's go.
So I'm going to say, all right. So, hi, Ian. My name is Barbara. I was born in Poland. I've been in London for 14 years. I've been researching into a realm of meaninglessness and meaningfulness of life, and how to own it all. So that's head. Okay, now I'm dropping my head into my heart. Let me introduce myself from my heart. Ian, thank you so much for being with me right now and sharing with me your life now. I appreciate every inch of our conversation. I feel like not using words anymore, just sitting silently and breathing into our spiritual transaction. So you can see my voice went less, I was less, I don't know, like, so I softened. Now,
there was emotion and there was feeling to the words, as opposed to just, using language. It actually resonates, doesn't it? You actually say something with meaning, you're trying to express yourself in that sense. So.
Yes, and from my gut. So let me
Okay.
introduce myself from my gut.
This is cool. I like this.
So I'm doing it already because my laughter comes up. So yes, this is my solar plexus and upper abdomen and diaphragm get involved. So I'm laughing. So I'm relaxing all my muscles. I'm getting in touch with that part of my body. All right. Let me just go for the expression.
I like the wiggle. Whoa!
That's it.
So the last one was more real from a point of joy, then from a sense of somewhere deep inside. It's very much a childlike energy, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm pretty much sure that's where I live all the time, in that kind of childlike energy. I do believe this though, and I think this is important. I often try and see the world the way a child does. I think that children have the most amazing kind of senses. They're very innocent. They're very pure. They see everything with wonderment, you know. And they're, you know, when you watch a child of 5, they kind of walk down to the end of the garden, are amazed by the plants within the garden, amazed by the animals within the garden. We miss that, don't we, as adults? You know, we're conditioned to kind of look right the way past that and not kind of engage with that kind of feeling.
That's beautiful. So, wow. So, and I, as 5-year-old, my books were a book of synonyms and antonyms, an encyclopedia. I was interested in the power of words, the sound of words. I was always thinking, oh, every word is like an ocean. I can dive in, you know?
Wow.
And yeah. That's why I haven't written my book, because my book will be a simple illustration and few words, because I'm simplifying. I moved into one room from a big house. I'm decluttering, Ian.
Do you think that the world has an issue with, we're all conditioned, aren't we, to want the next big thing, like I said, the next iPhone, the next important object. Do you think that we, I guess, objectify life as opposed to live a spiritual life then? Do you think we chase, I guess, things that are unimportant, I guess?
Well, you see, my method is about embracing it all. So let's say if you are preoccupied in infatuation of I don't know, let's say you think you are an ugly person, I'm an ugly person, and you are indulging in that state of mind. Yeah, so obviously in order to feel ugly and be ugly every morning, you have to what? Create that reality on a mental, emotional, physiological and energetic level. So you have to bend a little bit your shoulders, go through narratives in your inner talk. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. So you are creating a magnificent expression of not being good enough. And it's all magnificent because the structure is sophisticated. Do you know what I mean? Because you are repeating it, you are doing it religiously on a regular basis, and that's how the pattern gets ingrained.
Absolutely.
And that's how we become successful in being not good enough. So I always praise people. You feel life sucks. You feel like you're not good enough. Let's honor it, celebrate. Let's go into that energy. And I've created events where I hire a professional theater and I invite people and perform from that energy. So you can imagine, because people, I want their significant energy. So some of them are filled with depression, anger, and I ask them to be on the stage from that energy, because that at the very present moment, this is the energy, the most significant energy for them, that drives the day-to-day choices, the doing, being, belonging, and becoming. Yeah. So you honor the anger, the shame, the guilt, the apathy. You want the person to really own it, live it, express it. So I'm also looking for psychodynamic aspects of denial, avoidance, neglect, when you're suppressing the unspoken. So this is where the addiction comes in. Addiction is a reaction to subdiction. So there's a sense of void in you. There's a sense of lack. that you are trying to fill up. So again, going back to meaninglessness.
Yeah,
Stay comfortable with your emptiness, with not knowing.
Do you know, it reminds me very much of the Celestine Prophecy, hearing you talk about stuff like this. I guess you've read James Redfield's The Celestine Prophecy. So this idea, as the book begins, it talks about this spiritual void that everybody feels. That we, you know, with the lack of kind of organized religion perhaps being as prominent as it was a few hundred years ago, people are looking for stuff, and they're filling those voids, aren't they, with the latest technology, the latest iPhones, you know, the latest cars. You know, you're this person, you must drive this car. You're this person, you must wear these clothes. Is that where we're going wrong in life? Are we not connecting to the things that are inside enough?
You see, there is wrong and right, there is beautiful and ugly, there is bad and good. I dance polarities in quest for neutrality.
Ah, lovely statement. I dance polarities in quest for neutrality.
This is how you came out from the two-dimensional world, from oneness, one to many. Two-dimensional is just on the way to many. You won't be able to access the energy of galaxy unless you you've owned the duality. Yeah, so you need to dance it. Otherwise, you are rejecting one, and you're getting stuck into one-dimensional world because you're thinking white instead of black. So you're resisting. Yeah, so I promote living in non-resistance. So you dance from one another. Imagine a dancer on the stage just tiptoeing through for an hour, just looking into the sky and tiptoe on the tip. Yeah, that's boring. So it has to throw yourself into the flow.
No, absolutely. Yeah. You've got to feel that music. You've got to feel that energy.
Yes.
So you're talking then on November 11th, the Multidimensional Show in Birmingham. You're going to be talking about the singularity, aren't you, as well as some of your work originally? I mean, I know you do that. Is it the Yes Now project or something? But just explain to us explain to us the Yes Now project and also the singularity as well.
Okay. So my company is called Say Yes.
Okay.
And it's based on Vedic teaching, the Taoism, which is about embracing what is. So saying yes to yes, saying yes to no, saying yes to maybe, the ambivalence, the development of valency for living in polarities, embracing polarities. Not judging them, becoming neutral to them. My methodology, if you want me to work with you on your infatuation and resentments, you know, or on your imbalanced perception, I can help you to neutralize yourself so that when you are amongst people in the street, you are completely neutral. You don't put anyone on the pedestal. You don't put anyone in the pit. You are completely peaceful. So that's my forte in my methodology, and I work with my clients with this method. So this is pretty much it. So to explain, say yes, say no, say maybe. But Ian, even if you try the word yes, I mean, keep on saying yes, yes, yes to yourself.
Yes.
Yes, 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 yes. Right. Now, go for no. No. It's not a rocket science, darling. You don't need super intelligence to differentiate those two. You can see the body instantaneously adjusts. Beautiful.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because yes is it's a very positive, it's a very dynamic word. It's very open, like you say. It's very accepting. It's very we can. It's very very forward thinking. Whereas no, even just the sound of the word, you know, feels very much of a shutdown. Feels very negative, doesn't it? Like they say, holds in the throat. You know, doesn't want to come out in the same way. I know you do neuro-linguistic programming as well, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah, because the moment you ever so slightly change the way how you think, if you don't allow certain narratives to go through your inner talk, you will change your life radically. The way how you point the fingers, the way how you wear your body. You know, I used to feel very, very poor about my self-esteem. So in order to do that, my physiology, I used to look down and bend in my chest, you know, like a concave shape. So that was part of the making of feeling not good enough. So what I did ever so slightly, I stood in front of the mirror And I decided, it was a decision, Ian, it was a decision. I decided to ever so slightly, just 3 centimeters, lift my shoulders, just to came out from that concave shape. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine, this is in that moment when you raise your body, your eyes are higher. Then you have to meet other people in the street. The eye contact is available. You have to confront that, because when you look down, you don't have to confront other being, you know. So there was lots of, and I was brought up. My mom didn't look into my eyes. You know, that was her programming. She very rarely looked into my eyes. So I took that template. So, and I developed looking down as my way forward in life, in my adulthood. And when I challenged myself ever so slightly, I decided to keep eye contact with people just for 1 second. Then I added 2 seconds, 3 seconds. Now you can see me on the train and I'm smiling with, it's a peaceful, I'm relaxed. That's the big evolution for me, Ian, you see, because it's not what I know, it's what my life demonstrates.
Wow. Do you think then there are a lot of people, Barbara, within this life that are going through with the hunched shoulders, with the blinkers on, being conditioned by the world around them in order to be a certain way? And do you think that anything can be done for those people en masse? Are we heading in a particular direction spiritually, or how would you think?
Absolutely. So bringing the awareness of the observer and the observed, bringing this third position of those two dancing together. So you help people to see themselves playing their games. And they're beginning to realize, I have a choice. So they're coming out from the mental, a victimhood mentality of splitting and disowning part of the psyche onto other people, onto their partners. You probably come across a relationship where the partner has to feed your sense of acceptance by telling you all the time, or buying you flowers, etc. Because you disown that part of your psyche and you gave it to him, and now he's in control of making you feel beautiful. So you just take it back. You integrate it back. That's psychodynamics. You're not splitting anymore. You take it back. You stand in front of the mirror and you go for it. You deciding to raise in love with yourself. So it's a decision, darling, because we are so programmed, especially when it comes to disowning our traits. You disown your traits when you feel ugly about yourself. I mean, I'll give you an example. One of my clients, he came to a session and he said, why do I, coming into a new space, I'm surrounded by people, Barbara, why do I hate instantaneously? I have aversion to people that I've never met before. What the heck? I mean,
absolutely,
they haven't done anything to me. I mean, why do I instantaneously turn my back towards them? That's a beautiful question, isn't it? So absolutely. I'm answering it. Just to sum it up. For the rest of my life, I will be promoting very simplistic ways of explaining that dynamic to people, so that people become aware of splitting, disowning, and they move from imbalanced perception, they move from the victimhood mentality. That's why I dimensionalize victimhood mentality. I ask my clients, okay, go into feeling guilty. Let's discover that world. Let's multidimensionalize sense of guilt. Let's just don't stick it into one way of perceiving it. Let's multidimensionalize it. Let's create a big landscape of feeling guilty. Let's write a play about this. Let's make a film about feeling guilty. You know what I mean? It's about,
I love the energy, dude. It's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Do you think many of us then are living these, I guess, unspiritual lives in some respects? Do you think we're hiding, we're being conditioned by the world in which we live? I mean, we live in a rectilinear society, don't we? We're kind of conditioned to live within inside the box, quite literally and metaphorically in many respects. Is your work about breaking free of that, about helping people to achieve what's inside themselves, getting to a place where they are the better version of themselves?
But then you see, when you go to quantum physics, you jump from one quantum to another quantum of awareness. So you have new duality, you have new imbalanced perception. So the moment you shift and evolve from one, you are beginning to be exposed to new circumstances. And it's up to you whether you're going to become a victim of those circumstances or you're going to turn it into abundance. So I would say, yeah, I've lost my thought right now, and I love those moments. I love the moments, because sometimes we ramble with words, you see, and this is where Barbara welcomes the uncertainty. This is unintentional music, the mistakes, the pseudo mistakes that musicians make. Barbara, who lost her plot as a speaker. Can you lose your plot? Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
Barbara, I do it every week on the show. There's so many millions of thoughts and ideas and emotions that stream through my head that it's almost impossible sometimes to keep a train of thought because there's so much going on.
Yes, and that multidimensionality is glorious. I love losing plot, and I love finding it again.
No, but it's an interesting point. It's an interesting point, because I know this from doing art in the past, of course. One of the biggest dangers that any artist can make is the fear of failure, is the fear of making mistakes. And the best artists are the ones that aren't scared to make mistakes. We live in a society, don't we, where we condition people that there's one answer. It's at the back of the book, and you're not allowed to look because it's called cheating. But as we mentioned before about children, they have this viewpoint of life where there isn't just one answer. There's 150 different answers. You know, I can find a number of different ways to solve the same problem. Would we be better learning from that? Because that's one of the reasons why, like I say, I kind of live like a child. Because I believe that they have such a beautiful way of looking at the world, and I think that I enjoy. It's a much more enjoyable life, isn't it, to be that way?
I can feel your child now. You see,
dude.
Resonating from my gut with you. It's amazing, because sometimes see, you don't have to convince me. Your words were secondary. I was picking up on your aura, on your and it was really embodied. What you were saying was truly embodied. So I was getting that first, and the words were like an echo. I've lost my. You were only your own being childlike, so beautiful, and I believe you because it's so embodied. So I sense that. I'm pretty animalistic when it comes to instinctive sensing behind words.
Absolutely, and I've always been that way. And we've got a couple of minutes left as well, Barbara, so we're going to run out of time in a couple of seconds. But I wanted to ask you quickly about the singularity. I know you're going to be talking about that, isn't it? How does that factor into your work?
Okay. So, from quantum, singularity. Planck's dimension is the highest frequency, is the shortest wave, and this is the place, apparently that's what the statistics are, and science is telling us, that this is a place where we are one in singularity. Everything comes from that, from Planck's dimension. Everything comes from it. We are remnants of the primordial light experience. We are light. We are made from hydrogen. It's the beginning of the world. 75% of the hydrogen, 24 helium, and the rest it's So and this is some people, some scientists say we are frozen light. So, and there's something about my methodology flow, which is about going back home, darling, when you are no longer living in a world of duality. You are simply arriving at home when you are an infinite being in a human body. You're having human experiences, but you truly experiences this the state of I call it poised, a peacefulness, where you no longer dichotomized. Yeah. And this is a lived experience, darling. I'm gonna give you what my life demonstrates right now. I haven't been to a doctor for 4 years. I haven't had tension in my muscles. I train on a regular basis. I go to gym, I swim, and I had tension in my muscles. So my method is very much transferable into my physiological being. So I've been healthy person, and then I wake up, and this is not an exaggeration. I wake up every morning feeling fully alive. This is not an exaggeration.
I'm so jealous.
So I'm no longer 4 years. Yeah. So it's continuous. So people started telling me, Barbara, you need to package it. You need to start sharing that. How do you do it? So listen, darling, I haven't had colds, flus, catars, nothing. And I have method for it. So right now I'm packaging it.
It's so interesting because we were talking off air, of course, of what led me to get into radio, and I had an operation about 10 years ago. I was left with a bone infection for X amount of years, but I literally, since my mindset has changed, since I enjoy my job, since I love what I do, I've been a lot less ill. I know I've got a cold at the moment, actually, but it's the first time I've had a cold for literally the last 4 years. And nothing's happened, in that sense, because you wake up every day and you exist and you're happy and you have fun, you enjoy it. But it's interesting, isn't it, that we embody what we think and what we feel. If we feel good about ourselves, we generally tend to be healthy and be better. If we feel bad about ourselves, we generally tend to be ill, or we tend to struggle more with life and society. I love your positivity. I think that's really, really cool, and I love what it is that you do. We've got a couple of minutes left, dude. So just quickly. So the singularity, and I just want to ask this: are we just a bunch of molecules that exist within a sea of energy that happens to excite those molecules from time to time? Are we? I guess we talk about this idea of consciousness. Do you believe in things like the Akashic record? Do you believe that we're all one? We're all part of the same thing. They're all the same consciousness, and we experience ourselves subjectively through the eyes of a human? I guess in some ways. Random question, I know.
Wonderful question, but you see, I'd rather stay in a state of awe and love the question. Yeah. Because as much as I want to answer it, I want to carry on dancing it with all my senses, with all my spiritual capabilities. When I'm getting more and more comfortable with the realm of grave, of dying in this body and moving to another. You see, I was bending down upon my mother's coffin. It was open, and I was touching her body and thanking especially her hands, her womb. And that's the moment when you begin to realize that there is this existential fear in us. And in the last 4 years, I'm gonna say something really wicked. Remember when I was saying that I challenge myself ever so slightly, gently, with love. I'm not one of those people. I need to push myself. No. I belong to the world of fairies. I revolutionize my life, love-volutionize and flow-volutionize my life ever so slightly. And then the whole Hagamba is happening, and I can influence globally. I can influence the whole world by changing something ever so slightly in me.
I know, dude, that you've literally just taken, and that's a lovely place. We've got less than a minute to go, but you've literally just taken the exactly how I think about life right out of my head, actually.
Yes, so great things are made of small things done well. The inner circle of influence, the world on the inside, all the little people inside me. If I talk to them on equal terms, if I talk to all the people, the villain, the hero, the exile, the manager, the trial, the sovereign, the lover.
The Asylum.
So, Rachel, two fantastic little guests today that are coming up on November the 11th at the Multidimensional Show. Cara St. Louis and, of course, Barbara as well. That was really fascinating, wasn't it?
Yeah, two very different talks, aren't they?
Absolutely, two very different talks and two great speakers as well, by the looks of things as well. You must be really excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really am. It's huge, isn't it? I mean, the potential for all this knowledge for people to just take away and to start applying to their lives and to open their minds to new possibilities about our origins and our potential. It's going to have a huge effect. It's really positive.
I love it. I mean, it's really cool because it's really, really varied. Like I say, the two speakers we've just had there couldn't be any more different, could they, in many respects? Completely different ends of the spectrum, but there are commonalities within both as well. You can kind of find a sort of a central point within all of the talks, can't you, that kind of brings it back in a sense, I guess, this spiritual nature of ourselves and the nature of reality as well. Do you think that that's an important thing to do, is to pull all of these threads and different strands together in order to help us understand who we really are?
Yeah, essentially, that's kind of part of the purpose, or a big part of the purpose of the multidimensional shows, to show us our true nature and our connection to all that is, and even things like ET contact, I think, has a place there, in our wider reality and who we are and what our connection is to the universe.
I think it's important, isn't it? In order to understand, you have to be open to these ideas. You have to, like I say, make connections and join dots in many respects. So I believe that you're probably right about that as well. It's interesting. I don't necessarily, I know you've had sort of UFO experiences yourself, but I don't necessarily look at it and instantly think alien, in that respect. I'm very much open as to what those possibilities could be. We've mentioned the idea today, they could be multidimensional beings, there could be all sorts of different stuff. So I'm really looking forward to it, Rachel. November the 11th. What's the website? Where can we get tickets from?
Go to the multidimensionalshow.co.uk. And then if you click on the event page, about halfway down, there's a button that says book now. So click on that and it'll take you to the tickets page. Okay,
and who else is speaking?
So we've got Cara St. Louis and Barbara Chabior. And then we also have a performance by Eric Moore.
Okay.
He's got really interesting things to say in his music, actually. He actually works as a trainer, coach and mentor in the mental health field and performance field, and he helps people to overcome various issues, create a new direction, helps them to become happier and have more freedom in their life. But he also works as an artist, and he calls himself Metamorph. Some people have dubbed him Morpheus because he's very much about sort of freaking consciousness, so others start to study and research themselves and start to uncover the truth for themselves. He doesn't like to say that he wakes people up, but I think other people probably would say that he has that kind of role of kind of like awakening people up or rousing people to step out of this matrix, as it were, where we've got these kind of belief systems and preconceptions of what our world is about.
Absolutely. Rachel, thanks for joining us.
Word artist,
oh, is he?
Yes.
Oh, dude, I'm going to be filled with so much creativity on the day. I can just imagine. I think when you bring people like this together, you bring all these minds and all these different thoughts and ideas, it becomes a melting pot, doesn't it, of creativity, and it becomes a melting pot of, I guess, achievement in some respects. It's really kind of enthusing, and it's really kind of inspiring in many respects, because I'm pretty much sure anybody that comes across to one of these multidimensional shows is going to leave with a million different questions in their head, but also a million different possibilities and outcomes as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely it. It's about inspiring people to the possibilities, not about a belief system or telling people how it is, although of course we all have our own kind of take on things, including myself. But it's about kind of opening those, doors to different realities and new possibilities to each other.
Absolutely.
And actually, the meaning of the multidimensional show is not just about the show on the day, but about the show of reality, about how everything is essentially about our perception.
Yeah.
So kind of by using that kind of analogy of the show, it's kind of opening up, hopefully, even subconsciously, the idea that it's not necessarily as fixed as we think it is.
Absolutely. Rachel Murphy from the Multidimensional Show. Thanks very much for speaking to us on the Asylum today.
Thank you, Ian. Pleasure.
Wicked. And we'll get you back on shortly as well. I'm really looking forward to this. November the 11th. It's going to be loads of fun.
I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. Thanks a lot for having me on here.
No problem. Anytime, dude.
Okay, Ian. Chat again soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.